Are you ready to connect the dots to some amazing quilting designs? Hey everybody, I'm Angela Walters from Quilting is My Therapy, and welcome to the first video in the Dot to Dot Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along. Throughout this 6-video series, I'm going to show you how fun and easy it is to create intricate looking designs quickly. First, you'll learn the 2 basic shapes that make up the dot to dot quilting technique. Then we'll build off those shapes to create some truly stunning designs. To see all of the exclusive products or to learn more about the Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along, you can click the link in the description box below or scan the QR code. And if you've already purchased products from my website, I can't thank you enough. Your support is what allows me to keep these videos totally free. In this week's video, I'm going to show you the 2 basic shapes that make up all the dot to dot quilting designs. First, we're going to learn the diamond design that features a V shape. And then we're going to learn the Starburst design, which features the wedge. These versatile designs look great in blocks of all sizes and shapes. But before we get started, let's learn about the dots that make up the dot to dot quilting technique. When I'm talking about dots, I'm really just talking about reference points on the quilt that we can connect to create these intricate designs that fit the block perfectly. Think of them almost like a roadmap that you can follow to great machine quilting. So these dots that we're looking for can be a number of things. It could be a corner on a block, it could be a marked reference point, or it could be a previously quilted line. Now, when it comes to marking out the designs, you can mark as much or as little as you prefer. In the beginning, you might want more of a roadmap to follow, but once you get comfortable with the technique, you'll be able to mark just those reference points and create those beautiful designs. Of course, you can use any marking tools that you're already comfortable with, but the ones that you'll be seeing a lot throughout this video series include the designs with line stencils, pounce pad, and of course, I love my Mark Be Gone water-soluble marker. Well, now that we got that all out of the way, let's look at the first design we're going to learn in this video, the diamond design. The first basic shape that makes up the dot to dot quilting technique is the V, and we're going to use that to create the diamond design. Basically, the V just consists of a line that touches some corners of a block, but doesn't touch the others. But don't let the simplicity of this design fool you. It is so versatile and can be used in so many different ways. First, we're going to see how to mark out the design and quilt it in a square block, and then we'll move to the challenge panel and quilt it in another shape. So looking at the square I have here, this is where I'm going to create my diamond design. The dots that we're going to use for this design include 2 of the corners where the lines will touch, and then just inside the opposite corners. And this is why I love using the designs with line stencils, because it will help me quickly and easily mark those lines. So just placing that stencil right on the block and lining up, I can then quickly mark out that line. Now that I have those registration marks, I can use them to help me place the dots for the 2 that aren't touching the corners. And I'm going to place a dot just about an inch or so inside that corner. Once I get to the machine, I'm going to start at one corner and I'm going to quilt a line to that next dot. And we'll see what that looks like actually quilting it. But then I'm going to continue on to the next corner, to the dot, and then return back to where I started. For larger blocks, or if I want some more densely quilted designs, I can actually add another echo line inside of that, so I can mark another line about an inch away from the first one. These measurements that I'm giving you are just a guideline. The most important thing here is that I want to keep it symmetrical-ish on both sides. Let's move it to the sewing machine and see what it looks like to actually quilt it. I'm sure you've noticed by now that there's a lot of straight lines to these designs. You can use a ruler to help you get those nice straight-ish lines, or you can do it without it, and I'm going to show you both ways. I'm going to start at one of the corners where the line touches. From this point, I'm going to quilt on to that first dot, and now I'm going to move on to the opposite corner. I can move in a horizontal movement if I want, or I can tweak the arrangement of the quilt, whatever makes me feel comfortable. And I'm going to move smoothly to that point. And I'm going to repeat, going to the next dot and then back to my starting point. And that's one of the things I love about this design. It comes right back to where I started. And there I have my first diamond design. I could go ahead and go right into my next row, using these previously quilted lines kind of as my guide to hit my next dot. Now let's see how to quilt it with a ruler. I have a whole video series on machine quilting with rulers, so if you're new to that, you can check it out. Then on to my next dot and back to my starting point. I'm sure that some of you out there are thinking, really? This is the design we're learning? It's so basic. But I promise, when we start building off of this shape and creating some cool variations, you're gonna love it as much as I do. And it really is like a choose your own quilting adventure. I can add as many echo lines as I can fit in there. So I'm going to do just one more just for fun. I'm going to go to about an inch or so within the previously quilted line, on down to the next corner, and then back. Then, after I remove my markings, all I'll have is that beautiful design that fits the block perfectly. The shape of the block that you quilt the diamond design into is going to change how it looks. On the challenge panel that I'll be quilting along throughout this video series, we have this kind of diamond shape. But everything is still going to be the same. I'm still going to pick 2 of my corners to touch, and I'm still going to look within the other 2 corners about 1 inch or 1/2 inch or so. The result is going to be the same basic shape with more of a drawn out look to it because I'm fitting it into the block. And I just love how it fits that block and kind of draws attention to the points. Quilting the diamond design on a long arm can be just a little bit trickier than on a sewing machine because of the diagonal lines. We can't easily change the orientation of our quilt like we can on a sewing machine, so I always use a ruler when quilting the diagonal lines of the diamond design. Other than that though, the design still goes together the same way. Quilting this design on the long arm is really going to get you comfortable in using that ruler in all different directions. Soon you'll be whipping it around like a ruler ninja. One thing I love about the diamond design is that it starts and stops at the same point. However, sometimes I might want to end opposite from my starting point. For instance, let's say I have a row of blocks and I want to be able to quilt it. Moving on to the other side is as simple as quilting a line directly to the other side. So let's look at this example. On the panel, I have these 2 diamond shapes that come together to make a chevron. I could start at one point, quilt my diamond design, and then quilt a line directly to the other side. That's going to put me in position to quilt that next section, and I can quickly and easily move on. The second shape that makes up the dot-to-dot quilting technique is the wedge. And we're going to use that design to make the Starburst design. Now the Starburst design is perfect for medium to larger size blocks. And even though there's a lot of lines to the design, they're relatively short lines and it's really easy to quilt once you get the hang of it. The first dot of this design is the center of the block, and that's the point that all the lines are going to come back to. So think of it more like your home base. The other dots I'll be using are the corners of the blocks and the midpoint on each block. Now once I'm ready to start quilting the design, I'm going to start from the center of the block and I'm going to quilt my first wedge by going up to the edge and stopping about 1/4 inch away from the edge, echoing the side and returning back. Once I return to that home base, I'm going to swing out and quilt my next wedge so that it's about 1/4 inch or so from the first one. So all these wedges are going to stay nice and close together. I don't want any big gaps between them. And again, I'm going to stop about 1/4 inch away from the edge of the block. Echo the side of the block, stopping about 1/4 inch or so inside that corner, and return back to my home base. That basic idea, quilting that wedge that goes out and comes back, is going to rotate around the whole block until it's filled in. Let's move to the machine and actually see it in action. Starting from the center, I'm going to quilt a line directly up, going towards the opposite edge, stopping about 1/4 inch away. And once the foot of my machine is touching the edge of the block, I know it's time to stop, and I'm going to echo the side of my block to about halfway or until I get close to that reference point, and then return back to that home base. We're basically using the outer edge of the block as a guide to create that shape. Now once we have that first wedge quilted, it looks great, now it's time to add another one. And the thing to remember here is that all my wedges are going to stay close to each other. So my next line is going to come directly from that center point, ending up about 1/4 inch away from that previously quilted wedge. Then I'm going to echo the side till I get to the corner, and then come back to that home base. So I'm going to have a lot of lines coming to the center of that block, and that's great. That is what it's supposed to look like. But using a contrasting thread is really going to show all those little bits and bobbles, so just know using a blending thread color will really help. Now I'm going to continue working my way around that block, quilting my wedges. And what happens if you don't hit that center dot perfectly? Nothing happens. It's totally normal. Just get it as close as you can and move on. So here's a couple things to think about as you're quilting the Starburst design. First of all, I don't care that all the wedges are the same size. Instead, I'm focusing more on making sure they fill up the whole block as much as possible. Some wedges will be smaller than the others, and that's totally fine. And for the most part, I'm trying to keep it symmetrical-ish. Right, so if I have 2 wedges on one side, I'll try to do 2 on all the others. And what's really cool about this design is when you're done, it's not so much the straight lines that you'll notice, but that unquilted area in the wedges. Now this design is going to work best in medium to larger size blocks. I'm not going to try to fit all of this in a smaller area. Now one thing this design will force you to do is get comfortable going in all different directions. So just take your time, plot out your next couple steps, adjust the quilt as necessary, and continue on. Then once I've worked my way around the whole block, it's time to cut thread and look at my beautiful creation. Again, try not to stress out too much about making it perfect. Even if you have lines that bobble here, or maybe it's not perfectly straight, I promise when you step back, all you're gonna see is that beautiful unquilted area. It's just gonna look awesome. Now let's go see what it looks like to quilt the Starburst design on the long arm. Just like we saw with the diamond design, I'm definitely going to use a ruler to create those lines. Now we're going to quilt that Starburst design in this diamond area. Even though it's not technically a square, the design still goes together exactly the same. Start in the center, quilt a line that extends out towards the edge, echo the side, and then come home. Quilting that wedge that goes out and comes back is going to rotate around the whole block until it's filled in. Now you might have noticed one downside to the Starburst design. Starting and stopping in the center of the block means that I'll have to tie off and start a new line of quilting for each design. Most of the time I'll employ a little bit of cheating method to help me get in and out of that block. I'm basically going to quilt a line from the edge of the block to the center of the block. I'm using that stitching to get me into the center so I can then start quilting my Starburst design. Once I finished and filled in that whole area, then I'm going to move right on out the other side by quilting a line directly across to that point. Now you might be thinking, oh my gosh, that's more lines, but I'm telling you, when you step back, they kind of blend in with the rest, and I love how it helps me get from one to the next. Now, if it seems like a little too much to remember those designs, don't forget I have the free downloadable quilting diagram and tip sheet. All you have to do to get that is click the link in the description box below or scan the QR code. Now, if you need a little bit of extra help with the dot-to-dot quilting technique or these designs we've learned in the video, you can check out the expanded resource PDF. For just a few extra dollars, you can have more quilting diagrams, more tips, and even more quilted samples. To find more information about that, the free PDF, or even any of the exclusive products, be sure to check out my website. Well, now it is your turn. If you're quilting along with me on the custom panel I designed for the challenge, fill the areas highlighted in red with the diamond design and the Starburst design that we learned in this video. And be sure to check out my live chats on Thursday at 3 p.m. Central here on YouTube. It's the perfect opportunity to ask any questions that come up as you're practicing the designs. Well, I'll be back next week with the next video in the challenge where we're going to take that diamond design and create some amazing variations. Until then, everybody, happy quilting.